The Prince Who Waited 47 Years, Reza Pahlavi's Return to Iran. There's a photograph, black and white, taken at Tehran's Mehrabad Airport, January 16, 1979, just after midnight. A Boeing 727, engines running, steps extended, and at the top of those steps, a man in a dark suit. Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, the King of Kings, the light of the Aryans, the ruler of Iran for 37 years. He's looking back, not at the plane, at the city, at the country, at the throne he's leaving behind. Beside him, a teenage boy, 18 years old, Reza Pahlavi, the Crown Prince, next in line to the Peacock Throne. Neither of them knew in that moment that they would never return. The Shah died 18 months later in exile, sick, broken, betrayed by the allies who'd supported him for decades. But his son survived. Reza Pahlavi has spent 47 years waiting, learning, planning, building support among the Iranian diaspora, watching from afar as the country his family ruled for half a century transformed into something unrecognizable. And now, March 2026, as American bombs fall on Tehran and Ayatollah Khamenei lies dead in the rubble of his compound, Reza Pahlavi sits for an interview with 60 Minutes and says 4 words that send shockwaves through the Iranian diaspora. "I am ready to return." This is not a story about what might happen next. This is a story about how we got here, about the photograph at the airport, about the revolution that destroyed a dynasty, about 47 years of waiting. This is the story of the prince who never became king. Chapter 1. The Peacock Throne. To understand why Reza Pahlavi's potential return matters, you need to understand what his family was. The Pahlavi dynasty ruled Iran from 1925 to 1979. Not centuries, just 54 years. But they transformed the country in ways that still echo today. Reza Shah Pahlavi. Reza Pahlavi's grandfather seized power in 1925 through a coup. He wasn't royalty. He was a military officer who took advantage of chaos following World War I to install himself as Shah. He modernized Iran aggressively, built railways, established universities, forced women to remove their veils, westernized the legal system, centralized power. But he also ruled brutally, crushed dissent, banned political parties, built a cult of personality around himself and the ancient Persian Empire. In 1941, during World War II, Britain and the Soviet Union invaded Iran. They didn't trust Reza Shah's neutrality and forced him to abdicate in favor of his son. Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi. Reza Pahlavi's father. He was 21 years old when he became Shah. Young, inexperienced, initially powerless, Britain and the Soviets controlled the country during the war. But after World War II ended, Mohammad Reza Shah began consolidating power. Slowly at first. Then, after the CIA helped him overthrow Prime Minister Mossadegh in 1953, decisively. For the next 26 years, Mohammad Reza Shah ruled Iran with increasing authority. He modernized the economy, built infrastructure, expanded education, created a middle class, and he made Iran America's closest ally in the Middle East. Oil revenues poured in. American weapons poured in. The Shah positioned himself as a modernizing monarch, bringing Iran into the 20th century while maintaining ancient Persian traditions. But beneath the surface, anger was building. Chapter 2. The revolution nobody saw coming. By 1978, Iran looked stable. The Shah had ruled for 37 years. The economy was growing. Tehran had skyscrapers. Women attended university. Iran had the 4th largest military in the world. But the stability was an illusion. The Shah's modernization had created winners and losers. The urban middle class benefited. The religious establishment, which opposed westernization, did not. The poor, who saw wealth flowing to elites while they struggled, did not. And the Shah's secret police, Savak, kept order through fear. Torture, disappearances, surveillance. People hated Savak. They hated the corruption. They hated the inequality. They hated the feeling that Iran was becoming America's puppet. and they found a voice in Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. Khomeini was a senior cleric who'd been exiled since 1964 for criticizing the Shah. From Iraq, and later France, he delivered sermons that were smuggled into Iran on cassette tapes. His message was simple. The Shah is illegitimate. He serves America, not Iran. He has abandoned Islam. He must go. In 1978, protests began. Small at first, then larger. The Shah cracked down. The crackdowns made the protests bigger. By late 1978, millions were in the streets. The economy was paralyzed. The military was wavering. The Shah, sick with cancer that he'd hidden from the public, couldn't decide what to do. Crack down harder? Compromise? Flee? The United States, his closest ally for decades, gave him conflicting advice. President Carter wanted reform. The CIA wanted a crackdown. The State Department wanted negotiation. While America debated, Iran burned. On January 16, 1979, the Shah made his decision. He would leave. Temporarily, he said, for a vacation. But everyone knew the truth. He was fleeing. Chapter 3. The night they left Mehrabad Airport. January 16, 1979. Midnight. The Boeing 727 sat on the tarmac, the Shah's personal aircraft. Engines running. Inside the terminal, chaos. Advisors arguing. Supporters weeping. Protesters outside chanting, "Death to the Shah!" Mohammad Reza Shah walked slowly toward the plane. He was 59 years old, dying of cancer, though few knew it. His face was composed, calm. But witnesses later said his hands were shaking. Beside him, Empress Farah, his third wife. Elegant, composed, carrying their youngest child. And behind them, Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, 18 years old, tall, military uniform. He'd been attending pilot training in the United States. He'd flown home to stand with his father. Now he was leaving with him. The family boarded, the doors closed, the plane taxied, and at 1:24 a.m. it lifted off. Iran's monarchy, 54 years under the Pahlavis, 2,500 years of tradition stretching back to Cyrus the Great, ended on a tarmac in Tehran. The Shah never returned. He died 18 months later in Egypt, abandoned by the allies who'd supported him, denied asylum by the United States, which feared angering the new revolutionary government. But Reza Pahlavi, the crown prince, the heir to a throne that no longer existed, survived. Chapter 4. The Islamic Republic. What happened next in Iran changed the Middle East forever. On February 1, 1979, 16 days after the Shah fled, Ayatollah Khomeini returned to Iran from exile in France. Millions greeted him. He wasn't just a religious leader, he was a revolutionary icon. Within weeks, the monarchy was officially abolished. Iran became an Islamic Republic. Khomeini became supreme leader, not a king, but wielding absolute power nonetheless. The revolution turned radical fast. Executions of Shah-era officials, purges of the military, women forced to wear hijab, Western music banned, alcohol prohibited, universities shut down and Islamicized. And on November 4, 1979, students stormed the US Embassy in Tehran, took 52 Americans hostage, held them for 444 days. Iran's relationship with the United States, the alliance that had sustained the Shah, was over. For the Pahlavi family watching from exile, it was catastrophic, not just politically, personally. The new regime seized all their assets in Iran, froze their accounts, confiscated properties, declared them enemies of the state. The Shah's sickness worsened. He sought medical treatment in the United States, which contributed to the hostage crisis. Iranian revolutionaries demanded his extradition. He died on July 27, 1980, in Cairo, buried in a mosque. Not in Iran, the country he'd ruled for 37 years. Reza Pahlavi was 19 years old when his father died. Technically, according to monarchist tradition, he became Shah that day. Reza Shah II. But it was a title without power, a crown without a throne. He was a king in exile, and he had no kingdom to return to. Chapter 5. 47 years. What does a deposed crown prince do for 47 years? Reza Pahlavi finished his education, earned a degree in political science from the University of Southern California, trained as a fighter pilot. He'd always wanted to fly. He married, had 3 daughters, built a life in the United States, primarily in Maryland and Virginia. But he never stopped being the crown prince. He gave speeches to Iranian diaspora communities, wrote books, gave interviews, appeared on Persian-language television stations. His message evolved over the decades. In the early years, he advocated for restoring the monarchy. He was the rightful Shah, he argued. The Islamic Republic was illegitimate. But as years passed, as a new generation of Iranians grew up who'd never lived under the Shah, he shifted. By the 2000s, he was advocating for democracy, not restoration of the monarchy, but a referendum. Let Iranians choose their government. If they wanted a constitutional monarchy with him as a figurative king, fine. If they wanted a republic, he'd accept that. He positioned himself not as a would-be dictator, but as a unifying figure. Someone who could bridge the divide between religious and secular Iranians, between reformers and monarchists, between Iran and the West. And he waited. For decades, the Islamic Republic seemed unshakable, survived a brutal war with Iraq in the 1980s, suppressed protests in 2009, crushed the Green Movement, endured sanctions, built nuclear facilities, supported militias across the region. But cracks appeared. 2019, protests over fuel prices, thousands killed in crackdowns. 2022, protests after Mahsa Amini's death, women, life, freedom. Months of demonstrations, more brutal crackdowns. January 2026, economic protests, the worst yet. Reports of thousands dead. Each time, Reza Pahlavi spoke out, condemned the regime, called for freedom, promised support for democratic change. And each time, nothing changed. Until February 29, 2026. Chapter 6. The moment when American and Israeli jets struck Tehran, Reza Pahlavi was at his home in Maryland. He watched the news like everyone else, saw the explosions, the reports of Khamenei's death, the chaos. And he knew. This was the moment he'd waited 47 years for. Not because he'd wanted war, not because he celebrated death, but because the Islamic Republic, the system that had replaced his family's dynasty, that had ruled Iran for 47 years, that had seemed unshakable, was suddenly vulnerable. For the first time since 1979, regime change in Iran seemed possible. And if the regime fell, if Iranians had a chance to choose their own government, Reza Pahlavi wanted to be part of that conversation. On March 1, 2026, he released a statement. It was carefully worded. He didn't celebrate the bombing, didn't endorse the war, expressed sorrow for civilian casualties. But he said this: "The Iranian people deserve the freedom to choose their own future. I stand ready to serve in whatever capacity they deem appropriate." It was a statement of availability, not a declaration, not, "I should be Shah," but, "I'm here if you want me." And then, on March 6, 2026, he sat down with 60 Minutes. Chapter 7. The Interview. The interviewer asked the obvious question: "Do you want to be Shah of Iran?" Reza Pahlavi paused. He'd answered versions of this question hundreds of times over 47 years, but this time felt different. "I want what the Iranian people want," he said. "If they want a constitutional monarchy, I will serve. If they want a republic, I will support that. What matters is that Iranians, for the first time in half a century, have the freedom to choose." "But you're ready to return." "I am ready to return." 4 words, but they carried decades of weight. The interview continued. They discussed his father's legacy, the mistakes of the Pahlavi dynasty, the brutality of Savak, the inequality, the corruption. Reza Pahlavi didn't defend everything. He acknowledged the failures, said the monarchy, if restored, would need to be different, accountable, democratic. But he also defended the modernization, the education, the women's rights, the economic growth. My father's Iran was imperfect, he said, but it was moving forward. The Islamic Republic has moved Iran backward. When asked about Trump and Netanyahu, the leaders who just bombed his country, he was cautious. I don't endorse military intervention, but I understand why it happened. The regime left the world no choice. And when asked what he would say to Iranians watching, he spoke directly to the camera. For 47 years I have waited. I have watched from exile as Iran suffered, as your freedoms were taken, as your economy collapsed, as your children fled the country seeking opportunities that should exist at home. He paused. I cannot promise to fix everything. I cannot promise that transition will be easy. But I promise this. If given the opportunity, I will work for an Iran where Iranians choose their leaders, where women are free, where speech is free, where Iran rejoins the world as a proud, independent nation. The interview ended, and within hours it went viral across the Iranian diaspora. Chapter 8. The Reaction. The reaction was divided, exactly as expected. Among monarchists, celebration. This was the moment they dreamed of, the prince returning, the dynasty restored. Among secularists, cautious interest. Many didn't want a monarchy, but they appreciated his call for democracy, his willingness to accept whatever Iranians chose. Among reformers inside Iran, mixed. Some saw him as a unifying figure, others saw him as a relic, a symbol of a failed past. Among the regime's supporters, outrage. He was a puppet of America, a traitor, the son of a dictator. But the most important reaction came from someone unexpected. Masoud Pezeshkian, Iran's president, the man now trying to hold the Islamic Republic together in the wake of Khamenei's death. In a televised address on March 7th, Pezeshkian addressed Reza Pahlavi directly. The son of the Shah speaks of democracy, but his father was a dictator. He speaks of freedom, but his father's secret police tortured thousands. He speaks of Iran's future, but he has spent 47 years in exile, living in comfort while Iranians suffered. Then Pezeshkian said something that caught everyone off guard. If Reza Pahlavi truly believes in democracy, let him return, not with American tanks, not with Israeli jets, but as a citizen. Let him stand before the Iranian people and make his case, and let Iranians decide. It was a challenge, and it put Reza Pahlavi in an impossible position. Chapter 9. The Decision. Because here's the problem. Returning to Iran right now means walking into a war zone. American bombs are still falling, Iranian missiles are still being launched. The government is in chaos. Multiple factions are competing for power. If Reza Pahlavi returns now, he could be killed in a strike, arrested and executed by hardliners, used as a propaganda tool by one faction or another, seen as arriving with American tanks, even if he claims independence. But if he doesn't return, if he waits for the war to end, for stability to emerge, he risks being seen as a coward, someone who talks about leadership but won't take risks. As of March 8, 2026, Reza Pahlavi hasn't announced a decision, but sources close to him say he's seriously considering it, flying to Tehran during a war without American protection. To stand in front of Iranians and say, "I'm here, judge me, decide for yourselves." It would be extraordinarily dangerous, but it might also be the only way to prove he's serious. The photograph that echoes. Let's return to that photograph. January 16, 1979. Mehrabad Airport. The Shah and his son boarding a plane, looking back at Iran for the last time. The Shah never returned. He died in exile, broken. But his son survived. 47 years later, Reza Pahlavi is still here, still waiting, still hoping. And for the first time since that night in 1979, return is possible. Not guaranteed, not safe, not certain, but possible. Because Iran is in chaos. The supreme leader is dead, the system is fracturing, and someone needs to offer an alternative vision. Reza Pahlavi isn't the only one. There are reformers, Democrats, secular activists, religious moderates, all competing to shape Iran's future. But he's unique because he carries a name. a legacy, a connection to Iran's pre-revolutionary past. Some Iranians will see that as disqualifying. The Pahlavis failed once. Why give them another chance? Others will see it as legitimizing, a return to stability, a bridge between past and future. The truth is, nobody knows what Iranians want, because they haven't been allowed to choose for 47 years. But if the Islamic Republic falls, if Iranians get that choice, Reza Pahlavi wants to be part of the conversation. Not as a king demanding his throne, but as a prince who's waited half a lifetime for the chance to go home. End.